Hello everyone, I hope you can hear me all right, and welcome to the first webinar in 2023. We've got a very exciting talk to kick off with, but before I introduce tonight's speakers, I just want to say a little bit about how the webinar normally works for those of you who might not have been to one of these webinars before. Don't suppose there are very many of you. We've been doing them a long time now, but there's always new members, visitors and so on who might want to listen in. After I've introduced the speakers, we'll have the talk, and then if you would like to write your questions in the Q&A, you'll see the Q&A button at the bottom of the Zoom screen if you have a look. If you put your questions in there, then Jeff will be able to organise them, put them into a sensible order, and we'll ask them in that sensible order at the end of the talk. So I hope that's all clear. And without further ado, let me introduce tonight's speakers. We've got two speakers, Richard Hoare and Mike Appleton, as you'll see their names there on their screens. They're both from the Yorkshire Dales Millennium Trust, which is the organisation that we're going to hear about tonight. So I'll start with Richard. I think he's speaking first. Richard's a history graduate who spent 10 years in the travel industry. That was before COVID hit, and as with so many people, the pandemic led him to relocate, change his life, move to the Yorkshire Dales, and he had a career change and moved into the environmental sector. He first started working for a rewilding charity, and then he joined the Yorkshire Dales Millennium Trust's fundraising arm as a development officer, and he manages the trust's corporate partnerships and also a number of grant-giving trusts and foundations. And Mike Appleton, who's our second speaker tonight, he's the plastic-free woodlands officer at the Millennium Trust. He has a background in English, that was his degree, and he's got lots of different kinds of professional experience. He's worked in sports journalism, team management and welfare. And he's been leading the Millennium Trust's Plastic Free Woodlands programme since January 2021, and is an integral part of the Forest to Plastics Working Group, and he provides strategy and communications support. He's also the Trust's Media and Communications Officer, and he provides support on their Community Grants programme. So that's a little bit about both of them. The talk tonight, I believe, is called Supporting People, Landscape and Wildlife. So without further ado, I will hand over the floor to Richard and to Mike.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I will kick us off and then hand you over to Mike, who it seems like has 101 different job titles, but he's a very busy man. Firstly, thank you very much, everyone, for taking the time to join this evening and hear a little bit more about the work of the Yorkshire Dales Millennium Trust, which from now on I will call YDMT. Just Yorkshire Dales Millennium Trust is a little bit of a mouthful. We started in 1997 and you guys have actually been supporting our work since the get-go, so thank you very much for that. We've had nearly £6,000 of funding during that period. Most recent donations have been for our meadows and pollinator work. And the last donation, which we received in December, is for our woodland creation work, specifically our community growing schemes, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. So yes, thanks very much everyone for listening. Mike, can I have the next slide, please? Lovely, thank you, Mike. Sorry, I'm just going to sort this out because this isn't coming through. There we go, lovely. So yeah, as you can see, we are a small charity doing big things to support the people, landscape and wildlife of the Yorkshire Dales and the surrounding area. So we have lots of different project areas that come under those three banners, people, landscape and wildlife. And this evening, we will provide a whistle-stop tour of some of those projects. I hope we don't end up in a teaching you to suck egg scenario. I appreciate there's probably lots of good brains listening this evening that know a lot about the environment, climate and biodiversity crisis, but we'll do our best to tell you a few things that perhaps you don't already know. Next slide, please, Mike. Thank you. So yes, as mentioned, we are working to address the biodiversity and the climate crisis. We use our environmental work as a vehicle then to help connect people with nature for improved mental health and well-being alongside skills development. That's particularly geared towards those coming from vulnerable or disadvantaged backgrounds, where there's barrier accesses to nature and to green spaces. And another key area of our work is inspiring the next generation to protect the Dales and create career opportunities that will allow them to live and work in the Dales and hopefully stop that mass exodus to more urban areas. Next slide, please, Mike. And I think that's handing over to you.
Yeah, that's myself. Thanks everybody for attending tonight's conversation. It's always weird hearing a biography of yourself when you haven't written it, and I was rather cringing over that. Yeah, it was pretty horrendous, to be honest with you. But yeah, we do quite a lot of these talks, and you know, especially when we're asked to talk for kind of 3/4 of an hour towards an hour, we try and break it up with a few fun things as well. So this is a quiz that I've run in various kind of conversations that we've done, and to be honest with you, with obviously the people we're talking to tonight as well, if you don't get the answer to this quiz, and I think we should just close the seminar and go home, Rich, to be honest with you. So it's quiz number 1. So it's a tree quiz, so we're doing guess the tree. So if you want to kind of shout out in the chat or wherever, just let us know. So this iconic Dales tree was favoured by Dales cabinet makers for its toughness and suitability for veneers. I realise I need to give it a couple of seconds to let you type in the chat. Its berries are used for liqueurs, wines, and jellies. No answers just yet. Many settlements in the Dales incorporate part of its name in their place names, such as Thornton in Lonsdale. And probably the obvious one, it's our logo as well. So the answer to that is is hawthorn, which is what I've got to admit is one of my favourite trees, especially when it's looking like as it is on the left there. And we use a heck of a lot of hawthorn, particularly in our hedge planting schemes, which we've done quite a lot of over last winter and this winter. The only thing is, Rich, I'm sure you agree, it can be a little bit of a pain to plant and has a tendency to you know, you lose knuckles and your palms and things like that. It doesn't matter if you wear gloves or not. I think you always seem to get some sort of graze from a hawthorn, but they don't even talk to me about blackthorn. So as Rich said before, we focus on people, landscape and wildlife at Yorkshire Dales Millennium Trust. We were set up in 1997 as part of a Millennium Commission project. Originally, we were the charitable arm of the national park, because obviously the national park itself couldn't access charitable funds. So we were very, very closely aligned to the national park in 1997. We then realistically, we're probably only supposed to be around kind of 5 or 6 years, you know, getting the millennium done and, you know, nice fireworks and things like that. And but we're still here 25 years later. And that's thanks to, you know, organisations like yourself that are, you know, prepared to support our work and want to see some good things done in the Yorkshire Dales and surrounding areas. So the first thing of our kind of core is to look after the people of the Dales, which was our original remit in 1997. We were a very, very big grant giving organisation to help, you know, small organisations across the national park actually do some good in the national park and be able to go out and make a difference on small projects that would really make a difference to the communities of the park and beyond. So In 2000, so we're just preparing our impact report for last year. At the moment, these are figures from 2021. So £160,000 we as a charity distributed through our grants and partnership programs. An estimated 3,223 people benefited from our community grants program, and we worked across several partners as well. That included Westmoreland Dales, across Teeswell, and also our common cause as well. And this is very much, as I say, this is very much what we do. It is our core is to help small organisations do what they can in the Dales, and this is something that we'll be looking at over the next financial year to actually make our grant programme a lot more accessible and to have a bigger impact. Incidentally, that's, it was probably £160,000 in 2021. We're already looking at around about £180,000 of what we had distributed last year as well. And it's all about connecting people to the Dales. So when we give money out and help organisations and help people in the Dales, it's connecting people to the Dales with the obvious, understanding that if you connect people to a place and you get them to understand the place, understand the nature and what is actually happening within our ecosystems and our communities, that they then have a sense of belonging to that area and will be more enamoured to actually help protect that area going forward. So as Rich said before, we bring people to the Dales that might not get the opportunity to come out. The lady on the top in the top middle there came out to help us lambing at Rodney Beresford's farm, which is near Ribble Head. And you've got Kez in the top left there, who's one of our countryside apprentices. And then you can see at the bottom there, we bring school children out into the Dales, and they can just kind of enjoy and getting to know their landscape. I'm sure you all know that we have a generation of especially young people who have never been more disconnected from the countryside, and that's for various different reasons. Probably Xbox and PlayStations and mobile phones and things like that. So we're bringing people out to actually see what happens in the countryside and get actively involved as well. I'm 45. I'm sure you all remember those kind of day trips out into the countryside where you can actually get involved with what's happening. That's really important, and it's about changing lives as well. So the lady in the middle bottom there, I'd never done kind of a forest school before and actually lit a fire, and just simple things like that. Getting people to access what is available in the countryside will help us protect it in the future. And I'm going to throw some more stats at you, everybody, if that's okay. So we helped just over 1,000 young people to care about the natural environment, as I've said before. And we put on 84 events to give respite opportunities for minoritized or marginalized adults. We work in bringing people from Bradford and Leeds and also Blackburn and Darwin into the Dales to just get a bit of respite from their day-to-day life, especially if you're a asylum seeker or a refugee. You can be quite isolated, especially whilst you're waiting for your case to be heard. There's people that we've been working with through our People in the Dales project who've been waiting for their asylum to clear after 10 years. So if we can bring them out into the Dales and they can just get a peep of, one day where they don't have to think about what's happening the next day. Are they still going to be able to stay here? They're still going to be able to send home into probably a dangerous situation. If we can just give them a glimpse of a kind of, a bit of respite, a little bit of mental respite, then that's obviously a good thing. And we've got a group here who went caving at Ribblehead. I'm a caver, and if there's any cavers on the call today, I'd recommend going caving at Ribblehead. Runscar Caves, you don't even need a suit on to go in. Thistle Caves can be a bit ropey, but it is good to actually get out and just try different things. And we obviously have all come through the pandemic, and it probably took the trust probably a couple of months to realise where its position was in the pandemic and what we were going to do. We actually connected with groups, and we took ourselves to those groups because obviously they couldn't come to us and provided packs and crafts and things like that. And then when things started opening up, we were able to bring people working on kind of COVID wards, as you can see there, into the Dales, just to get a little bit of respite and just to get away with everything that's going on. Incidentally, just talking about the pandemic there, when obviously COVID hit, we repurposed our community grants into COVID grants, which meant that we provided support for groups that were giving medicine to people, were befriending, all the sort of stuff that was happening in the communities. We helped to fund, and there's several organisations in the Dales that would not be here if it wasn't for those grants. And it is, again, as I said it before, but it's thanks to groups like yourselves that we were able to do that and make sure that these really important groups could continue. Rich?
Mike, can you still hear me, by the way?
I can.
Okay, perfect, fine. So woodland wellbeing, I've been very busily fundraising for this over the last few months, so it seems like it's all I talk about. But it's a new project area for us that we're really excited about. So the project has been set up to support young people who are disadvantaged through isolation, poor mental health, perhaps for socioeconomic reasons. To connect with nature for improved mental health and well-being, but also skills development. So the beneficiaries that we work with, typically they're struggling or at risk of exclusion from mainstream education. And as I mentioned, coming from low socioeconomic, generally urban areas. So we launched a pilot project this year. And we've had lots of young people taking part in activities that promote a connection with nature. And boost well-being with the idea that will positively enhance their self-confidence and self-esteem. Sessions they've included woodworking, bushcraft, planting an orchard, creating food gardens and natural crafts. But we try and combine that with more reflective practices such as mindfulness, nature journaling, swinging in hammocks and fire lighting, which Mike had a picture of a young girl lighting a fire on the previous slide. The quote that you'll see on that slide is from a tutor at Motivate College in Bradford, who worked with young children who've become disengaged with mainstream education. The initial kind of feedback from the project has been really, really positive. So we're looking to roll that out now and seeking funding to continue that on into the new year. But yeah, really exciting new project, and hopefully there's a real need for that out there as we've seen so far. Next slide, please, Mike. And I think this is a quote. I'll let you read the full quote, but it really encapsulates what we do with young people, but also other vulnerable groups that we work with. So the key thing for me there is my mind was clear and I rarely felt anxious. I think that's something we see time and time again with the Woodland Wellbeing Project that we've delivered. And I think probably at this point it's worth me mentioning People in the Dales as well, which is a long-standing project area that Mike's touched upon there, where we work with refugees and asylum seekers, bringing groups out into the Dales, getting them out of a dilapidated hotel where they're sat staring at the same four walls all day, get them connected with nature and get them feeling like they're doing something valuable with meaning. And I think particularly at the moment, that's really important. So long may that side of our work continue. Next slide, Mike.
Yeah, I think it's me, isn't it, with the with another quiz. I think that's interesting what Rich has said there, is that especially with the woodland wellbeing, that has marked a bit of a change in the charity over the past. I've been at the charity 4 years, and when I joined the charity, we were very much centered on numbers. So our People in the Dales project have brought near enough 10,000 people to the Dales over their decade of existence. But I think as we've kind of evolved as a charity over the last few years, and especially after COVID, we realised that it's the longer term impact that's important. As I said before, we've all been on those kind of school trips where we've ended up in the countryside, and it's been great. But I don't know about you, but I always went home and thought, I'd love to do that again next week. I'd love to do it again the week after. And we're now moving away from that kind of, making sure that we have 1,000 people, 2,000 people, 3,000 people coming to take part in our programs, and actually helping people manage and change their lives, Rich. I think that would be fair to say. So the woodland wellbeing is a classic instance of that, of, somebody starts the course and will be there for 6 to 12 weeks, and that manages their mental well-being, and they can obviously progress through life rather than that one hit. So I've got another quiz for you, everybody, if that's okay. So it's another tree one. So it's not a guess the tree. This tree came to the Dales as the last ice age drew to a close. The branches are so flexible that in spring it is possible to tie them in a knot without breaking. The timber was often used in traditional wattle and daub walls of Dales housing. And finally, it is our only edible nut tree. So groups of nutters would descend on local woods to harvest clusters of small brown nuts from these trees. So hopefully we've all got that one now. And that is, it's disappeared off my screen, Rich. We must have deleted it. Can you remember that was the hazelnut? No, it wasn't a hazelnut. It was, this looks really bad now. There's me all confident there on those 4 little bits. So I'm going to ask the chat to bail me out with, it'd be hazel for obvious reasons, wouldn't it? But yeah, that's always quite embarrassing when a slide has disappeared. Rich.
Don't worry, Mike.
We don't know if anybody's watching, do we? Because we can't see cameras or anybody. So yeah, it's just me and you chatting.
So on to landscape. So the slide in front of you now kind of shows the highlights really of headlines of our Hay Time and Be Together projects for 2021 and 2022. And Be Together was actually a project that the Society supported in 2021. So thank you very much again for that. Since 2000, through both of those projects, we've restored more than 800 hectares of wildflower meadows and supported communities across the region to plant their own wildflower patches and community meadows. I'm sure you know this already, but a species-rich meadow can support more wildlife than any other habitat. So that would include bumblebees, bats, hedgehogs, hares, and birds. Next slide, please. So what is the problem for pollinators, and why is our work in this area so important? Again, some of you may know this already, but hopefully a few of you don't. So traditionally managed wildflower-rich hay meadows are obviously an iconic feature of the Yorkshire Dales, but a high priority habitat in the UK, across the UK, featuring many local biodiversity action plans. However, sadly, some 98% of meadows have disappeared, largely due to agricultural intensification, and the pollinators that they support are facing a really uncertain future. So for us, by working together with landowners, with farmers and communities, we're creating and enabling better managed meadows and wildflower patches that will provide crucial habitats for pollinators. Next slide, please, Mike. So that's what we have been doing. Now to what we want to do in the next few years. So the plan for 2023 to 2025 is to relaunch our restoration work in the Dales. So much of what we've done in recent years has been in the Forest of Bowland, but we want to bring that field scale restoration work back into the Dales, improve conservation value and extent of wildlife rich habitat. And we want to expand our pollinator community engagement work to increase public awareness and empower groups to create and care for local wildlife habitats. So the project blend of conservation and community engagement, we hope, will enable us to deliver a wide range of benefits that really kind of speak to our core aims as a charity. So climate, obviously everyone talks about trees when it comes to carbon sequestration, but a healthy hay meadow is a really good carbon sink as well, and can sequester an estimated 3 tons of carbon per hectare per year. The biodiversity also helps slow the flow of rainwater runoff, with wet grasslands holding up to 10 times more water than intensely managed fields. From a biodiversity point of view, as I've mentioned, species-rich meadows support an astonishing range of wildlife, and restoring meadows and creating wildflower-rich areas, we hope will start to kind of form that vital mosaic patchwork within the Dales, and reduce fragmentation, which is a big problem in the area. And finally, people. So we want to inspire as many people as we can through these projects to connect with meadows, empower communities to look after our ecosystems, and help ensure long-term sustainability for these habitats. I'm not going to read everything off that slide, but just a quick run through of the key figures there. So over the next few years, we're looking to restore 100 acres of meadow, educate 500 people at a community scale, involve 200 volunteers with plug planting. That will involve community groups, but part of my work at the moment is looking at leveraging more of our corporate support for other project areas aside from woodland creation, which tends to be the kind of default for a lot of corporates out there. So we're trying to engage corporates more in our meadow restoration work, which is really exciting. We want to work with 40 farmers and train them in meadow management, and connect with 20 community groups to create patches and community meadows. Next slide, Mike, and I think that's back to you.
Yeah, thanks, Rich. Rich mentioned there about the fact that we're trying to move some of our, trying to expand our meadow work, because, you know, if anybody ever approaches us, especially from a corporate entity, it's always about kind of tree planting and getting more trees in the ground, which is obviously brilliant. But you know, we do have kind of pressing priorities in people, landscape, and wildlife. So I think that most people on this call will know that that YDMT have helped plant a heck of a lot of trees since 1997, as well as being a grant giving organisation. Nearly 1.6 million trees we're now up to that we've helped plant across the Dales with a number of kind of landowners, and obviously the national park and in Nidderdale, and just trying to bring people together to increase woodland cover in the Dales, which is obviously you know, I think most people will know is one of the lowest in the country. I keep seeing kind of stats bandied around of 2.7% of a broadleaf cover in the Dales. I think when you include kind of conifers and other species like that, it probably goes up to about 4.2. But if you speak to a national park, sometimes you get a figure that says, well, it's only 2.2, and then other times you get a figure that says it's 3.4. And so, but I think we can honestly say that, you know, whatever percentage it is, especially if it's under kind of, you know, 3 to 4% for broadleaves, you know, we need to do a lot more. Since I've been at the Trust, we've had a campaign that we've really focused on called Together for Trees. And this has been in two particular phases. So our first appeal was to plant 100,000 trees in 3 winter planting seasons, which we got very, very close to. I think we did around about kind of 96,000 trees. And the second part of that program was actually a funded program by National Lottery, which kind of brought communities together. So it wasn't just down to us going out and finding landowners, actually bringing people in the community together to help plant trees. And you can see that the stats kind of speak for themselves, really. You know, we you know, bettered all the targets that we wanted to do. We got 4 community woodland schemes planted as well from, and it stands to be corrected here, Rich, but there was the Settle Environmental Group was involved. There was SEBA Environmental Action Group was involved as well, and there's one Malham as well, and I can't remember the fourth, that all came together to plant trees. And these are just people who wanted to make a difference in their community and had seen kind of areas of land in their local communities that we could help them plant up. As I said, we've planted 1.6 million trees, but you know, unfortunately, that probably means that as a trust, we have a legacy of 1.6 million plastic tree shelters in the Dales. And part of the project that I'm working on now, which is 2 years old, is 3 things really. It is to collect and recycle the tubes that are actually in the landscape at the moment. It is to trial alternative guards as well. So I have 10 trial sites across the Dales now with various different bioplastics and cardboard guards and other different types of planting. And the third part of the project is to actually make some kind of sea change in the forestry and specifically the woodland amenity planting sector. Really, with that latter is because if we don't make a change now and get ahead of the curve, we can see what's happening with single-use plastics being banned glacially, unfortunately. But you know, the government are starting to ban single-use plastics. That it will eventually get to into the woodland sector. So we need to get ahead of the curve. And you know, the project's gone really well, and I'm going to say that because it's my project and I get paid to say so. But yeah, it has gone really well. We've collected 60,000 tubes from across 3 sites. So we have central collection hubs for our tubes. One is at Skipton Auction Mart, which opens in May, and one is in Apperset, which is around about September, October. And we had a trial site in Beamsley as well. We brought people out to remove the plastic as well from various woodlands across the Dales and Nidderdale. We've planted a lot of trees, as you can see there, up to 10,000 trees in the actual project itself, with various different types of trial guards. And we've helped to continue the work of the Forest Plastic Working Group, of which YDMT are a prominent partner of. And I think when you look at where we stand as a charity, you know, we are a local charity. You know, our scope, as we said before, is people, landscape and wildlife, and we're sat leading that group with the Forestry Commission, DEFRA, you know, Forest and Land Scotland, Woodland Trust, and people like that. So as a charity, we do punch above our weight, and always have done. And again, it's my 3rd time of saying it, so I must be on for a set of you know, must get my loyalty card at some point. But yeah, as I said before, that it is down to kind of thanks to donations from people like yourselves that we're able to lead on this work. So as I said before, we bring people out into the Dales to help us do this. It's free labour for me, really, and we just kind of lock them down in the site and put a big fence up, and they're not allowed to leave until they've shifted a load of tubes. That one's up at Snays Home at Merkpot, where the squirrel sanctuary is. So we've been working there for 2 years. And there's still plenty of material coming out of there, and you can see the quality of the plastic, especially in that bottom left picture, of how badly degraded this material is when it comes out of the landscape. And you probably consider that those tubes in that bottom left picture there on the right hand side will probably be 20 years old. So you can see that there is a significant legacy issue with plastic in forestry, which we're trying to crack. And they all go away to, that's one of our central hubs in Skipton, and basically they're picked up and taken to be recycled through Tubex, and they make them into new tubes. So when you're looking at the kind of the DEFRA's waste hierarchy, and you know, you should try and reuse, and if you can't do that, you kind of just recycle and dispose. And you look at a circular economy at the moment, with all the evidence that's out there, and the kind of environmental impact of alternative tubes, the evidence seems to point towards using a plastic tree shelter where a tree shelter is needed, as long as they are recovered at the end of their useful life cycle. The issue is they're not being recovered, and that's why we have to go here and remove them all from the landscape, because the landowners forget about them or haven't got time. It just becomes, you know, the busy, especially farmers are just busy and are onto other things. Rich?
Yes, so new for 2022-23. So as Mike's alluded to, despite the work of us and other organisations to try and create new native broadleaf cover in the Dales, we are still amongst the lowest in England and the lowest of the national parks. I've actually gone with 2.3%, Mike, of broadleaf cover. Is that consistent between the two of us? Did you say? I
think it would be, yeah.
Well, at least we're consistent at YDMT then. So yeah, despite all of that, still only 2.3% broadleaf cover, and as we know, landscapes thrive on complex biodiverse ecosystems that are going to be more resilient and adaptable to climate change. One of the constraints on planting in the uplands in particular has been the availability of suitable planting stock, which is sometimes true of common species, but particularly true of non-commercial species, which are common in the uplands as part of open woodland mosaic. So there we're thinking about species like eared or tea-leaved willow. So in response to this problem, we have launched community growing schemes across the park. The aim of the scheme is to grow 20,000 saplings through local community groups and using nurseries that have been stocked from local Providence seed, and helping hopefully to fill the gap in the local supply chain and support the green economy. So these community growing schemes, we hope, will strengthen our efforts to develop a landscape richer in trees, woods and hedgerows. and the project will engage local community groups in the climate and biodiversity crisis, utilise volunteers for seed collection, and hopefully provide a template for other community groups to follow up in establishing their own nurseries. Next slide, please, Mike. So Wharf Down Nat Society, your most recent donation of £1,000 came in December, and that was to support one of our community schemes in Malham. So that funding will enable us to grow 350 tree saplings with the Malham Environmental Group. It will enable volunteers and communities to be trained in tree ID and seed collection, as well as providing tools, skills, materials needed to set up micro nurseries. And in addition to supporting those communities, and again, this is really crucial for our broader aims and objectives, it will also help us engage vulnerable urban groups with the biodiversity and the climate crisis, and enable them to support nature recovery in Mallandale and across the wider national park. Worth mentioning the two younger girls in that picture. Can I get away with saying that? I think I can, can't I? It's an obvious enough discrepancy. So you'll see Chloe there, who's on the left of the picture, and Shelby with the cool, funky young person hat on. So Chloe is our woodland trainee at the moment, which again, her role is very much funded by supporters. And then we have Shelby, who's our YDMT trainee. So she's working across all of our different areas within the organisation to get a feel for the charity sector and learn more about our work. So yeah, it's great to be able to support young people and actually have them as a part of it. Next slide, Mike. Did you lose me then for a minute?
Yeah, we are, Rich. We're just losing you just a little bit.
Have you got me back?
Yes.
Fine. Next slide anyway, which I think is you.
Yeah, just before I go to that, when we were talking about Together for Trees before, I think it's probably fair to say that our tree planting programme has changed, certainly since I've been at the Trust. You know, there are obviously lots of different ways to attract funding to plant trees now. So you've got UCO is an obvious one, you know, the Woodland Trust, their More Wood scheme, as kind of, you know, if people want to kind of make I don't know if you can say make a living, but actually want to get a really good financial return from planting a woodland, you know, those kind of big schemes now seem to attract, you know, kind of bigger, more wealthy landowners, Richard, and probably fair to say, and you know, they get access to that funding. So where our predominant focus at the moment is obviously hedgerow planting, riparian planting as well, and those kind of field margins and corners that farmers have as well. And therefore, with what we're doing with the community growing schemes, especially when you're working with farmers, it's really important that those trees survive. So by doing a community growing scheme with a tree that's good provenance and is sourced from this area, it gives it, I think, gives it a better chance of that scheme succeeding, which is obviously important for the landowner as well. So we just come to the final bit of our chat, really, and this is the wildlife section of our kind of core beliefs. Everything we do with people and landscape kind of feeds in to wildlife. And again, as I said before, it's about connecting people to nature and to wildlife. So there's three really good stats there. We nearly got 2,000 people who've come together to learn practical skills to help pollinators across communities. We have directly sown wildflower seed through our Be Together project and other projects as well. And then we help people make bird, bee, bug and hedgehog houses. I'm really pleased I managed to say that because I couldn't last time. So, you know, school children coming together, community groups and things like that to help just connect people with nature in their area. But it's about, again, we go back to it a couple of times, haven't we, Rich? It is about helping people's well-being, which has obviously never been more important at the present time. And if we can bring people out and they have a good time, they will have a tendency to support nature in the future. And again, you know, these sessions really make a difference to the environment and our mental health, which is obviously really important. What I've been unable to show on this in this slide is we did a project at Aysgarth. I think it was probably 2020, which actually planted hazel trees to increase dormice, and that has been a really popular scheme, and the press loved it as well. From a kind of a journalist, a PR man, I think if you can get anything kind of cute and furry and show it in front of the press, they love that, and that has been a great scheme. And we are looking for more schemes like that across the national park, as well as helping some of our most threatened species as well. So we work quite closely with the with the national park to pinpoint kind of habitat creation in areas where we'll know it'll help red listed birds and wildlife. Rich, I think that's probably over to you to talk a little bit more about that.
Yes, this really is just teeing up the final quiz. So we're on the home stretch, guys. So I just want to very briefly mention quite a big project now that's been running for a number of years. So Long Preston Floodplain Project started in 2004, and Deeper Connections was launched in 2021 as a part of that bigger project. So Long Preston Floodplain, I imagine some of you have been there if you're into your birds in particular. So it lies between the Dales and the Forest of Bowling. It's a unique wetland area, a rich and important kind of history for farming, and a priority habitat for wading birds and rare flora. Part of the site is a triple SI as well. So when we started the project, there was very much a shared vision amongst lots of different stakeholders. So this was very much kind of around bringing different priorities and opinions across multi-stakeholders together to deliver a shared vision and a shared aim. So just some of the key kind of drivers really at the outset were creating a mosaic of grassland and wetland habitat, create a functioning working landscape with farming at its heart, benefit and sustain local communities, provide an education resource for schools and management demonstration site for farmers, provide an opportunity for people to experience a wetland landscape, and finally create a healthy floodplain, storing carbon and mitigating against the effects of climate change, as well as supporting an abundance of plant and wildlife. So yeah, it's been a great project. The results have been really strong. Mike, is there anything you want to add on that before I run into the quiz?
Yeah, I think it's a I pass through the Long Preston floodplain every day, or when I'm certainly in the office on my commute, and it is really an untouched gem in the Dales. It's just obviously outside the Dales, so I would recommend, if anybody's down there and they fancy walk around, there's a hide there as well, and we do quite a lot of work on access. But it really is a key of, we brought 26 farmers together to help manage that floodplain, and I'm sure the farmers I know wouldn't mind me saying, farmers can be quite a skeptical, cynical bunch as well. So to bring those amount of people together to help protect a landscape is and I think it's filled to everybody who's been involved in the project, and that includes kind of River Ribbles Trust, obviously the National
all the tongue
Park,
twisters for you,
YDMT, yeah. So we brought a lot of people together, and hopefully this project, and I know it's we're coming to the end of the Deeper Connections project within YDMT in the next kind of 6 months, but we are looking to extend it, and hopefully it is something that will continue. But if you head to ydmt.org, you can see we've done a kind of a 360 view of the floodplain. There's loads of really nice kind of overhead photography as well, and it's a fantastic project to be part of.
Next slide.
Rich.
You can also find out more about it here. So we've got a couple of virtual and online events that align to this project in the next few weeks. So yeah, if you take a look at our website, you'll find more information about them and where to sign up. But yeah, some really interesting events there. I would have loved to have gone to one or all of them, but somehow I've managed to be away for every single one of them. So I'm going to miss them all, but never mind. So on to our final quiz before we take some questions, I guess. Next slide, please, Mike. So birds of the floodplain. So I'm going to show you 4 pictures of birds. Initially, I just want you to write down the name of the bird. So Mike, if you just want to go through the birds and let everyone have a couple of seconds to write down the name of each one.
Yeah. Okay, number 2. Number 3.
You might want to mark these A, B, C, and D, by the way, rather than 1, 2, 3, and 4.
So therefore, this will be the last one. And there we go. Okay, Richie, you wanted me to click to the next one?
Yeah, let's go next slide. Right, so now it's number and picture matching time. So according to the wetland bird surveys, I would like you to try and match the peak count with the bird. So you've got 4 peak count numbers there, and it's just a case of matching the number with the correct bird. So I'll give you a few seconds to join the dots.
I did something similar, Rich, with a group at one of our funders is People's Postcode Lottery, and I did something similar. I put 3 of our most common wetland birds in the floodplain, which were, it was lapwing, curlew. I can't remember the third one, and nobody could get it.
Well, I deliberately made this harder.
Could get one. So we've got high expectations tonight, haven't we? And PPL are quite, People's Postcode Lottery are quite kind of forward thinking, have a lot of kind of environmental projects, but nobody could even spot a lapwing, which is a worry really, because that's one of my favorite birds. You can spot it anywhere. So no pressure, everybody.
Let's let people buzz in. So who can tell me what bird is A and what is the peak count for that bird? Feel free to buzz in, anyone. Yeah, 300 is the correct peak count. Who knows what the bird is? Pintail, correct. I think that was Richard. Point for Richard. Bird B. Who can tell me what bird B is? Yes, a teal. And the peak count that goes with teal? Interesting. Someone's gone with 3,000. Richard knows his birds. It is 591 is the peak count. And bird number C. Number C. Ian Manfield, you are the first in with the correct name, Richard. And peak count. Oh, Richard's got his first one wrong there. The peak count for that bird is 2578. And finally, I think the easiest one potentially, D is a lapwing. Yeah, absolutely. And the peak count for that is the only number left, which is 3,000. So I think you asked us to finish at 20 past, didn't you? It's 19 minutes past, so I think we've pretty much nailed it. So yeah, just from myself and Mike, thank you very much everyone for listening. We've only lost a couple of participants. That's good going, Mike. They can't have been that bored. So thank you everyone for listening, and thank you again for your support since 1997, since the get-go. It's great that you're still donating now and still supporting priority projects that are really important for us, and hopefully important for you guys as well. So thank you very much.
Thanks to Rich and Mike, entertaining and educating. Didn't know we were going to get tested on the way through, but there we go. Took a bit of a while for Wharfdale Nats to find the chat button, but once we did, I think people had a fair bit of knowledge. We do have a fair number of questions. If people have any more, please put them in the Q&A, because it's hard for me to keep track of that and the chat. If I could start, and I'm not sure which of you want to tackle this one, but you mentioned early on in the people section about connecting with inner city groups, whether kids or asylum seekers, other disadvantaged folks. How do you make that connection? Because Wharfdale Nats has been trying to do some work in that area and via schools and really struggling to get uptake.
Yeah, I can take that one, Rich, if that's okay. To put it bluntly, Jeff, and the person who asked the question, we had a very, very tenacious project officer who set that project up 14 years ago and made a connection with a particular group called DARE out of Blackburn with Darwin. And by bringing people from that group into the Dales, it kind of showed other groups what was possible. And that project officer in particular, her name was Judy, is very tenacious at actually making those connections and kind of going into to Leeds and Bradford and connecting with groups there who actually showed it's through connections basically, Jeff, if we're being really honest. So she set up a project with the City of Sanctuary in Leeds and the maternity stream out of Leeds City itself. And then from there, once you set up those projects, you get other kind of people involved. And then once you get one person who actually comes out and experiences that, they then go back to their communities as well and want to do something similar. So what Judy did and what People in the Dales has done is it's always been very keen in training the community leaders as well. So a person who would come out and climb Whernside, say, would then attend, if they wanted to, attend a residential perhaps 6 months later and actually learn the skills to be able to bring a group out themselves. So the health and safety skills, navigation and things like that. But it's more about confidence as well. So that's how we've done it, particularly with kind of refugees and asylum seekers. When it comes to kind of schools, it has been a case again of the project officer realizing that if they go into a particular school with a need and just getting on the phone and asking people, do they require a particular project. We've got a project called Green Influencers, which Rosie Russell Cohen runs, and she's been working in Bradford as well. And I've just literally gone to, probably through a connection with PAD, with People in the Dales project, has actually gone in and said, I think you would benefit from this. And that's how it happens. I was asked a similar question at People's Postcode Lottery about 6 months ago, and I honestly don't believe we could do that project now without Judy being at the trust and having that tenacious. I think it would be really difficult to set up a project of that kind of complexity now, and it's thanks to her hard work. She's retired now, Jeff, which I think is a bit out of order, really. When there's more and more people want to come to the Dales, but
just leaving room for you and Rich to have made the career changes into this sector that you've got.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know if that's answered the question, but it is down to kind of networks, really.
We've about 500 members. I think we've just passed 500 members in Wharfdale Nats, as well as donations. How can those folks help YDMT? Do
you want me to do that one as well, Rich? Or?
I think really just wherever possible, try and get involved in our work and spread the word as far as of what we do. So we have a quarterly newsletter which Mike puts out called Milestones. So signing up for that and just engaging with the work that we deliver that's geared towards community, signing up for some of our events so they can kind of hear a little bit more about what we do firsthand and get involved in some of those events, learning more about our work and then just kind of spreading the word really. You know, a lot of what we do is a result of the partnerships and the connections that we have and the community that we've built over the last 20 odd years. So, you know, I think the more people we can add to that community and the more people that talk about the work that we do, you know, it's amazing how many landowners will come to us because they've overheard someone talking about our work and they've been trying to plant a field corner up for the last 5 years but had no idea what to do. Someone mentions YDMT and then they'll get in touch with us. So yeah, I guess without just chucking money at us, that's probably the way to support us. Just engage with as much of our work as you can and help us spread the word, I guess.
Yeah, signing up to that newsletter is really obviously boost
Mike will get his bonus if you do. So
yeah, so if we can get so many, I can get a stock and grade bonus. But it's also being able to you know, if people sign up to a newsletter, which you can do on the website, you can either have an email or a printed version. Especially with the email version, we can get the fact that we might be doing a tree shelter collection in Snaysholm or wherever else, and we can kind of get a call to arms, and that's the best way of staying in contact.
And I think you said earlier you've got a really simple website, ydmt.org.
That's the one.
Yeah, great. On sort of funding, where does the bulk of your funding come from, and how do you invite applications for grants and then award them out to other groups?
I'll take funding, Mike. You do the grants.
Okay.
So a big chunk of our funding comes from People's Postcode Lottery, which Mike has been a real pivotal part of growing that relationship. So he needs a big pat on the back for that. And then I mentioned corporate partnerships that I'm responsible for. That's been a really rapidly growing part of our funding kind of portfolio, if you like, over the last couple of years. So I think this year we'll be at around the 300,000 mark in terms of funding from corporate partners, which will be about a quarter of our total budget now. And then the remaining money comes from trusts and foundations of varying sizes and shape, and then major donors and individual supporters. So we have lots of people that have been supporting our work for decades, and generally they'll do that through tree dedications or through living bouquets, which is kind of the equivalent tree dedication for our hay meadow restoration work. So we have lots of kind of smaller individual supporters that will dedicate trees or dedicate different bouquets kind of multiple times across the year. So yeah, it's a mixture, but largely it's People's Postcode Lottery, corporate partnerships, trusts and foundations, and then individual supporters.
Thank you.
Yeah, in terms of grants, we're in the process of streamlining our grants program to set to launch again on April the 1st. Which would mean the idea is we want YDMT to become a hub for grants. So if somebody needed funding for a woodland project, or they needed a tea urn in a village hall, anything like that, then automatically they would think of YDMT. And to do that, we need to make the application processes as simple as possible. So that's what we're working on at the moment. What I would say is if anybody kind of wants a community grant, will be to get in contact with me at grants@ydmt.org, and I'm quite happy to come and chat to you about what you require and talk you through the application process as well. We give grants. The plan is to give grants from £250 to £5,000 for community grants, and that can be anything from cost of living to slate repair on a roof, or anything that kind of benefits anything that would benefit the local community. And have a big impact in that community is something we would look for. But we also look at heritage features as well. So if there's in Clapham there's a fountain that kind of had stopped working, so we had to really, because we're based in Clapham, so I think we'd have been driven out of town, but we helped get that running again. And you know, we've also done various kind of milestones on the side of roads leading to kind of Settle and Craven and beyond. So we look at heritage features as well. In the past, we used to help restore barns. And if there's any wealthy benefactors who are on the call who fancy helping us restore more barns, then I'll be more than happy to speak to you. You know, barns, unfortunately, obviously an iconic part of the Dales landscape, but a good barn restoration that can be used by a farmer, you can get into six figures very, very quickly, unfortunately. And I don't think my grants budget is going to be that high this year.
Sure. Probably the last one before we'd best head back to Helen to wrap up. A practical one about how easy is it, or otherwise, to germinate hawthorn from berries? And if you stick willow into riverbanks, is it likely to take? Sort of somewhere in between the natural regen and planting in tubes approach.
Okay. What I would say to that one. What I would say to that one is, if the person who has given us that question could just perhaps drop their email address or email me at media@ydmt.org, and I'll get that question answered by our woodland team. Although I'm part of the woodland team, I don't know that at the moment. Willow should just go straight in from, we're doing some work on riparian planting, so that should just go in, and that takes really quickly. And in my experience, doesn't need to be protected. Unfortunately, in practice, people just shove a plastic tube on everything and don't actually consider that we might be able to use willow here, or we can use alder because deer can't stand alder. But the germinate question, if the person who asked that question could drop me a line on media@ydmt.org, and I will.
That's Trish. I'll
yeah.
We'll see if Trish got your email. Otherwise, if she comes through us, I'm sure we can track you down.
And I'm more than happy to. And Jeff, if we've missed any questions as well, again, on that email address, if anybody wants to drop us a line, more than happy to.
Yeah, the only one I haven't got to so far that's come in more recently is about which projects you've done in Wharfdale.
Okay, that'll be one that we can follow up.
Yeah,
as well.
Yeah. But thanks ever so much for the double act. It worked very well. I hope the audience weren't too distracted by the Chris Whitty next slide, please. But the fact of the limitations of Zoom and having two presenters. But thanks again. I'll pass back to Helen to wrap up.
Thanks, Jeff. And Richard and Mike, what fantastic work you do. I'm so impressed and inspired by hearing you talk. It's not often that you hear an organisation which can tell you not only about how they've managed to sort of connect people with nature in the way that you're doing, but also, you know, it's a two-way thing, isn't it? You're giving nature to people, and you're giving people to nature, and it's just such a wonderful set of projects that you've described to us tonight. You've obviously done such a great job of sort of finding your own special niche in this, you know, in this complicated area of environmental work. You know, you've got these wonderful community projects where you're combining helping out the people who already live in the Dales, bringing people who need to spend more time in that kind of environment, and also helping the wildlife at the same time. Absolutely phenomenal stuff, and I feel very privileged to have heard it all. Really nice to have the quiz as well. I must admit, it was an absolute torture for me because I don't have any access to the normal chat, so I couldn't put my answers in. So it was very frustrating, actually, seeing all those birds and the counts and thinking, I'm sure I know that one. I'm sure I know that one. But anyway, I did get the birds right, but I got the counts wrong. Yeah, I would have had the teal way up there. Yeah, very surprising to me. Yeah, I'm going to have to email you separately to find out how you get access to that hide at Preston Deeps, because I've often seen bird reports from there, but I don't know how to get there. So yeah, I'll be sending you a message to try to find that out. But yeah, absolutely wonderful, guys. Just a couple of small announcements about things that are coming up. I believe we have a microscope evening on the 9th, and you've to bring your own specimens along, so it's said on the slide. The next actual meeting of Wharfdale Nats, and I think it's a physical in-person meeting in Christchurch, that's going to be on Valentine's Day. Oh, Jeff, thank you, saving me with the slides. Yes, so that's the microscope evening. The next meeting is this one, wastewater in the Wharf, an update from Rick Batterby. I'm sure many people will be interested in hearing what's been going on so far as keeping up the pressure on Yorkshire Water is concerned. And then February the 11th, sorry, I've done them in the wrong order. February the 11th, there's a bird outing. That's going to be led by David Smith. We're going to go to Staveley. I'm hoping to go to that. Do note the change of time. It says 10:30 on the programme, but it will in fact be a meeting at 10 a.m. So set off a little bit earlier if you're thinking of coming along to that. Okay. Well, hope to see some of you at one of those upcoming events, or perhaps more than one. And thanks again to Richard and Mike for an absolutely amazing insight into their even more amazing work. Thank you.